Bama's second scrimmage is tomorrow, so who do Jimmy and I think need to make a huge impact?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson with the AHSA Radio Network. That's me. Jimmy Stein with Bama Online. That's him. And welcome back, Jimmy, because we missed you yesterday. But this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I'll tell you about FanDuel in just a bit. Thanks to you everydayers. Thanks to you newbies. And Locked On is, of course, your team every single day. Jimmy, Alabama has a huge second scrimmage tomorrow. But, since nobody can be there to witness it, I'm wondering if it's even taking place at this point.
Yeah, DeBoer's fall camp has been incredibly accessible compared to Saban camps, or in the sense that there's multiple press conferences with assistant coaches every week, a lot more player availability. DeBoer himself has been available, but one similarity has been how the scrimmages are locked up. In fact, DeBoer scrimmages are even more locked up. But let's not assume that this is how it's always going to be. Let's remember that there's a slight advantage Alabama has going into this year. No one's quite certain what Alabama is going to look like on offense and defense. No one knows whether to study last year's Alabama team or the previous Alabama teams, or just look at DeBoer's offense at Washington and just assume it's going to be exactly like that. So there's a bit of an advantage right now that they have, that the schemes on offense and defense have been sort of hidden from the public and from opponents. So they want to maintain that advantage this year. So let's not assume that in years going forward, it's always going to be quite this secretive, but this year it's an advantage. So they're keeping it locked down. And as many people that are listening to this know, not even the Red Elephant clubs, which have for over a decade or longer been invited, the members of the Red Elephant Club, to watch these scrimmages at Bryant-Denny. The Red Elephant clubs are not invited this year, this fall, for the first time in a long time. Upset a lot of people. But the reason is because DeBoer wanted to maintain an advantage in secrecy that opponents didn't know what the offense and defense would quite look like. So they're trying to keep it as under wraps as possible.
I understand. I get it that, and you're in the Red Elephant Club. It is probably a little annoying that you can't do something that you planned on doing every year. At the same time, what would really make Red Elephant Club people disappointed? Lose to South Florida.
Losing in game 2 or even game 1. Yes. And it's happened. I just did a piece on BOL about Alabama coaches and their debuts. And 5-2. 5-2 since Coach Meyer. You want to get to that later? Cool.
All right, so let's talk about the scrimmage tomorrow. And, BOL has come out with 6 people they believe are on the clock. I'll just run them down, and you can add into it whatever you want. LT Overton, Caleb Odom, Jalen Milroe, which is, that's sort of cheating because you could put him on there every time. Deshaun Jones, Will Conformi, and Jahad Campbell. The thing about Jahad Campbell is, he's been sort of banged up. So that one's kind of interesting. For me, I think it's more about any of the wide receivers. I want to hear more about how well these wide receivers are doing. I heard Charlie Potter from BOL today on Dusty and Danny in the morning, because they have Alabama at number 6. And so they count down and bring on somebody to discuss it. And he was really giving rave reviews about the wide receiving crew, which I also give, but I also preface it by saying, there's a lot of unknowns in this wide receiver group. I'm just fired up about the potential.
Yeah, I think it can be great. I think, to me, it's more of a matter of Jalen. And by that, I mean, for the wide receivers to have big seasons, it only makes sense that the quarterback has to have a big season, right? Jalen's got to get these guys the ball. But I'm fired up about that group, really. I see, I'm going to call them 6.5 guys that I see in the first team rotation, 3 of which are real proven players in my mind, or at least semi-proven, in Jeremy Bernard, who's caught the most balls in college football games of anyone in the group, then followed by Kobe Prentice and Kendrick Law. And we've seen Kobe, we've seen Kendrick Law. We kind of have an idea of what they are. Jeremy's new to us, but Jeremy's caught more balls than even Kobe Prentice. So he's sort of proven. The 3 newcomers that are just haven't done either anything or much in college football are Ryan Williams, Cole Adams, and Emmanuel Henderson. And I am as excited about those three as I am the first three.
Let me interrupt you for a second, and I'll let you go back. But it's interesting you brought up Emmanuel Henderson, because on BOL I noticed they had some photographs from practice, and Emmanuel Henderson was one of them. And the only thing I could say was, God, he looks pretty. I mean, good Lord, he looks like something out of the new college football game. I mean, he looks like something you create. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily, that Jimmy Johns was a great looking athlete. Alabama's had some great looking athletes that never really, took a foothold. And so far, I would put Emmanuel Henderson in that category. But maybe, Emmanuel Henderson, more so than anybody outside of maybe Jalen Milroe, may benefit from this new coaching staff. I feel like the last staff just never could get where he needed to be. And now that he is officially 100%, ain't messing around, this is where you're going to be, wide receiver, maybe he can commit to it and the staff can commit to him.
Yeah, E-Man, as his teammates call him, E-Man is well suited for the new staff showing up. I mean, here's a guy who's really benefiting from the change in staffs a couple of different ways. First of all, the new staff is arriving throwing the ball more. So all the receivers benefit, right? It's just then a matter of who's ready to play. Well, you look at his career, he showed up his freshman year. He was learning the receiver position because he played primarily running back at Geneva County High School. So freshman year, learning to play wide receiver and doing it in the SEC. Second year, now he's set to play two things. A, he got hurt and missed a big chunk of the season. B, Alabama just didn't throw the ball a lot last year. I mean, I talk about it all the time because people complain about this or that about the numbers. Jalen Milroe only threw the ball 23 times a game last year. And when you only throw it 23 times, which means you're only completing about 16 passes a week, and you got to divide that between the tight ends, the running backs, and the receivers, there's just not a lot of balls to go around. But so now Emmanuel Henderson is now completely a wide receiver. He's now completely ready. And then here comes the new staff throwing the ball more, and Milroe a year older and ready to throw the ball more. It's just good timing for E-Man. He's going to be a big part of things this fall. I feel confident. The only other receiver I didn't mention that I think will be with the first team rotation is Caleb Odom. I think he's sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And by that, I mean, he brings so many tantalizing traits. They're going to want to get him involved. He's just probably the seventh guy. So how involved does he get? I don't know. I think his situation might mimic a little bit like Henry Ruggs in his freshman year. Ruggs didn't catch many balls at all when he was a freshman, but they were all big and for big
they were all
plays.
touchdowns.
And I think Caleb Odom could do something similar-ish.
Hang on, Jimmy, I'm getting a call. Okay. Yeah, I'll tell him. That was Emmanuel Henderson. He said he would prefer you call him Mr. Henderson.
Not E-Man. I don't get to. I'm probably not the cool kid.
Other people can call him E-Man.
Not you. Not me. Okay, I'm with Mr. Henderson on this. It makes sense.
One other thing, it's so funny you say that about Alabama and passing the ball more. So maybe somebody like Mr. Henderson will get another opportunity. Because you know what? This just dawned on me. You say Alabama only threw the ball 23 times a game last year, which is true. But it feels like every offensive play I remember was a pass.
Yeah.
And I think that's because we never really had – boy, I don't even remember what the longest run of last year was. I mean, you can compete. But it feels like Jakes McClellan never really got loose for like a 70-yarder or Roydell. Maybe Roydell's run against South Florida in the mud very late that he didn't even score on, if I remember. Maybe that was the longest run of the year. Again, this just dawned on me, so don't be mad.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And I think it's something to look up because that's right. Alabama ran the ball a lot last year. It's just that there wasn't a ton of success with it in terms of did Alabama lead the SEC in rushing? No. Did Alabama lead the nation in rushing? No, of course not. And there weren't these home runs like Luke is saying. That's a great point. There weren't many highlight plays, but Alabama ran it a lot, and they actually ran it pretty effectively and pretty efficiently, even in some big games. They actually ran the ball. I'll tell you, what might have been their best game on the ground, even though the stats won't say it, but that game against Michigan, they had a good day on the ground against Michigan when virtually no one else did. I mean, they had some success. Even Justice Haynes had a nice day, and everyone's like, why didn't Justice Haynes run the ball more? Jason McClellan averaged 6 yards per carry against Michigan.
But he averaged 6 yards a carry because he always got 6 yards.
That's right.
That's the thing. We were mutters. We were mutters, Jimmy. Okay, we're going to continue this conversation because there are more people that are on the clock for this scrimmage. But of course, I need to tell you about FanDuel. FanDuel's the absolute best, absolutely cannot beating. Look, we all love sports, and we love them so much we never want them to stop. But as you know, everything is sort of simmered down a little bit. We get fewer games right at the moment. It's coming back, and the sports are going to start sportsing again. But FanDuel lets you always keep in the action no matter what. All you have to do is open the app and dream up any time and any kind of bet you want, and you get to place it. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day all summer long, yo. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Want to remind everybody, check out Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin doing yeoman's work over there, doing the Lord's work when he talks college football. So go check out Locked On College Football as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's think about this. Who are some other guys that you're looking forward to? Now, I mean, if you want to go with one of the guys BOL put out there, I'm with you. I'll tell you somebody, and again, this may be cheating because we always look at the quarterbacks. I'm sort of anxious to hear about what Ty Simpson does again. I mean, I'm so confident in Jalen Milroe. My confidence in Jalen Milroe at this point may even be unwarranted, but it may not even be deserved, but I have it. I just feel like, now when I hear people talk about the Heisman and his name's not in it, I'm mad. I'll tell you that. But I would like to hear about how Ty Simpson's doing, because one thing that, I talked about this yesterday doing the solo pod, that injuries, they're popping up everywhere, Jimmy. And, Alabama needs to be prepared just like everybody else needs to be prepared. So I certainly want our backups to be ready too.
Well, another thing Ty can do, give Ty a pep talk. Hopefully he listens to the show. He should. And Ty, if you're listening, the thing he can do is not only get prepared every week like he's going to be the starter, because he has only one turned ankle away. And as much as Milroe runs around, that could so easily happen. So you have to prepare every week like you're going to be the starter, because it could easily happen. But I think what Ty could really do, focus on, is I'm going to play so well in these scrimmage and in my opportunities that there is not a competition in 2025. When Jalen Milroe moves on to the NFL, that there's not a competition, that there's no doubt that in the coach's mind, it's like, well, yeah, if Jalen goes pro, then Ty's going to be the quarterback. Make it a no doubter. Don't even give Austin Mack, Dylan Lonergan, and Keelan Russell the very idea that they could win the job over you. It's your job. And that's really what Ty needs to do. Position himself to where there's not a controversy or a competition in 2025. And I'm with you, Luke. I've always been high on Ty. I said, 1 year ago when we were predicting how quarterback would play out, I admit I was wrong. I thought ultimately Ty would win the job last year. I was wrong. And thankfully that I was, because Milroe had such dramatic upside. And I was never down on Milroe. I was never like, oh, Milroe's never going to be good. It was just, I was more, I guess, pro Ty being great than I was anything else. But here's a fact, though. And I thought of this earlier today. It's funny when you said something occurred to you, because this occurred to me earlier today. Had I been right and Ty been the quarterback, I don't know that Alabama beats Georgia, last year to win the SEC championship. Alabama achieved what it achieved a year ago because Jalen Milroe. Milroe beat Georgia because of Milroe in the fourth quarter. There were other games, the LSU game, where it was kind of we had to match them score for score in that game. I don't know that anything less than a Milroe would have even won that game, which was really tight until about 5 or 6 minutes left. So, Milroe is the reason Alabama was SEC champions a year ago. And if Alabama achieves great things in 2024, it will be because of Jalen Milroe, in my opinion. I mean, for Alabama to achieve great things, it's going to have to be on his right shoulder and his legs both.
Yeah, and here's another thing that you bring up. What I love the idea of is Ty Simpson approaching this season. Of course, I think coaches always say, hey, be prepared like you're going to go in the next play or whatever. But I think that there is also an upside to Ty saying, I'm going to be ready if I have to go in, but I'm really planning on learning this year and being ready for next year. And what that can do, and see, in the old days, this is how it worked before all these transfers, that every guy sort of knew, okay, I can come in, I'm going to learn, and then I'm going to be ready. And instead, if let's say Ty does get in some, and let's say Ty doesn't do well, then what that's going to do is Austin Mack, Dylan Lonergan, Keelan Russell are going to come in and go, that's my job. And so maybe they put undue pressure on themselves. Maybe they don't learn what they need to learn trying to make that wow play to impress a coach. Again, I know that somebody could take the other side of this. I'm just saying I kind of like the idea of a strategic pecking order and also knowing your place without having your feelings hurt. In this day and age, that is very difficult to get across to young people who believe they always should be out there playing. And Ty Simpson, to his credit, was a 5-star quarterback who has never really had to sit on the bench, probably. So unless he was sitting on the bench in the third quarter because he blew out somebody.
I wonder if Patrick Mahomes' career looks different right now had he played year one instead of sitting behind Alex Smith. I mean, I would tell you that Mahomes greatly benefited from that rookie year sitting and learning behind Alex Smith.
Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love.
Great examples. I mean, not being thrown to the wolves has some upside. And here's another example. You could never do it because he was the number one pick. You know who might have also benefited from sitting last year? Bryce Young. Mm-hmm. What if Carolina had a veteran quarterback out there taking that beating while Bryce sat and learned? And instead of now he played, he was thrown to the wolves. Now you got people questioning whether he belongs or whether he's good enough. And heck, a lot of it was just how terrible that team was. And he was literally thrown to the wolves like so many. I mean, if you have a rookie starting quarterback, you probably have problems beyond quarterback. Not everybody's got the situation that Caleb Williams has in Chicago or that CJ Stroud had last year in Houston, where you're kind of a plug and play and win guy. I mean, Keenan Allen's going to be, Caleb Williams is throwing to Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. I mean, that's a tremendous advantage. And
DJ Moore should be catching passes from Bryce Young.
Yeah. Although maybe the Panthers wouldn't have Bryce Young if they hadn't traded DJ Moore.
They should have. They could have tricked Chicago somehow. Chicago obviously would fall for something back.
It was just crazy. But anyway, my point being, sitting and learning is beneficial. It's not fans going, "What? I'm the best player playing." You gotta learn the sport, and it is a difficult, complex thing. And like I said, even Patrick Mahomes, greatest quarterback in the world today, he sat and learned. I say to this day that's benefited him.
All right, Jimmy, one of Alabama's key targets has set his commitment date. But, of course, I'm going to tell you about Gametime. Love me some Gametime. Look, I've said it over and over again. I said it yesterday. The Gametime is the one thing we have on here. I love all of our sponsors, but Gametime is the one that I've used the most, and it's the one that I can speak from personal experience. Look, if you've never used it, go there, go to Gametime, download the app. Super easy. Anywhere you get your apps, use code LockedOnCollege, get $20 off that first purchase. Terms do apply, but whatever. You will love it. I've used it a bunch of times, right? And the $20 off is great if you're a first-time user, but you save so much money every other time you use it. It pays for itself. I'm telling you. So go to Gametime. I've used it for the World Series. I've used it for other Major League Baseball games, college basketball, college baseball, NFL, college baseball. I used it for a ton of stuff, right? Concerts. I've used it for a concert. And you can see where your seat is. It's just unbeatable. I love it. And the customer service, chef's kiss. Love me some Gametime. Go check them out. You will not regret it. Once again, go check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. he does just the best. I just love his podcast. I listen to it all the time. Great American. And, I'm on there a few times, as is Jimmy. So go check us out too. Anyway, Jimmy, AK Deer has set his commitment date of August 20th. That is, I still feel very good about where Alabama sits with this. I'm sure you do as well. Look, it's going to, just like the rest of recruiting, it's going to go down to signing day no matter what he says. But I believe that Alabama will wind up with AK Deer. I want you to touch on that, but also touch on, will this have an effect on Turbo Rogers at all? By the way, Turbo Rogers, next week, I will be calling Turbo Rogers against Vestavia. So I'm looking forward to that in the Kickoff Classic in Montgomery. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, boy, it feels like at BOL we made the prediction AK Deer to Alabama. It feels like that was a year ago. It was probably just like a month ago or something, but it feels like forever ago that we've been waiting on this kid to pull the trigger. But we still are maintaining our prediction of AK Deer to Alabama. And boy, what a fantastic talent. This will be a big-time pickup. In fact, mathematically, be looking for this if you're into the rankings. And I'm into the rankings, sure. I'm not quite as obsessed as others because I just look at them a little differently. But I'll say that adding AK Deer, I understand, might push Alabama back to number one again, in the recruiting rankings. So that's fun. And it's definitely proof of how good this class is. As to how it affects Turbo, it affects him greatly and not at all in both. And this is what I mean by that. It affects him greatly in the sense that once Alabama has added AK Deer, Alabama feels good about running back if they only sign one. And you're like, why? Well, you have 5 on scholarship right now, and they like all 5 of them. None of them are seniors. Only one of them is draft eligible, and that's Jam Miller. So let's assume Jam Miller moves on, and then you add AK Deer, you're still at 5. So Alabama really only needed to add 1. And if you add AK Deer, you're like, okay, job well done. With the Turbo thing, then it's a matter of, okay, do we take 2? And the question is really Turbo's to answer. Let's remember when this new staff got here, Turbo was offered by the old staff. And Turbo did not really have a junior year. Turbo transferred to IMG and played his junior year at IMG, and they have a wonky schedule. They also have 10 running backs, some of whom were seniors. He had very few carries his junior year, and there's basically 0 junior tape. So the staff gets here and they see that Turbo's committed to Alabama, and they can go back and watch some 9th and 10th grade tape, but there's no 11th grade tape, and there's no camp with Turbo Rogers in it. So what they want to do is, they know he's good or Saban wouldn't have taken him. All they want to do is watch him. Like let's see some games. So if Turbo is great, they may push for him even though they already have AK Deer. But if he's not great, they can say, hey, we're good at running back. So really, Turbo has just always been let's see what he's got his senior year. And you're going to get a good look at him. Luke's going to get a great look next week against a pretty good team in Vestavia. He's playing a 7A schedule in Alabama. You're going to get a good opportunity to evaluate how good he is because he's playing against good competition. So I'm rooting for him. My personal hope is that Turbo knocks it out of the park and Alabama pushes for him and signs both. That's my selfish hope. But the good news for Alabama fans is, hey, once you land AK Deer, Turbo sort of becomes gravy no matter what he's like, right? Because AK Deer is ranked ahead of Turbo by every service, right? So, the home run is AK Deer. The gravy might be Turbo. Let's just see how he plays. And Luke will get an up-close look, and we'll get a good report in just a week.
Couple of things. I love how you combine sports with Thanksgiving. Like, he's a home run hitter, and he would just be a gravy on top of the baseball you knocked out of the touchdown zone.
Well, I guess I don't want to say AK Deer is a turkey and Turbo's the gravy on him.
Here's the other thing that while I'm watching you talk, I'm sorry for those who are listening on audio and they can't see it. Jimmy's got the old iPod things with the wires, and it looks like you are a terrible hippie because it looks like an extension of your hair wrapping around the back of your neck over your shoulder, and that does make me laugh.
I'd set it up so good, and then 8 seconds before we hit record, it falls to crap behind me.
I mean,
it kind of goes. I'm moving in. We're moving in to the.
They look like they're so long they're connected in Tuscaloosa while you're in Fahrenheit.
It was the only way. It was the only way to get this thing to work is to
Right.
run the wire from Tuscaloosa to Baldwin County.
Because I put it in the synopsis, Alabama is apparently going to be one of the schools that the WWE will sponsor for their turnover belts. I actually have a picture, so if you have anything to say about it, feel free. But I did also want to mention that that tonight on ESPN there will actually be an Alabama commitment that will be playing, and there we go with the turnover belt. I don't know if that moves the meter for anybody, but it's out there. So, but I do think it's more important to talk about tonight. Dijon Lee will be opening up. Now he's not on TV. That game is, or actually that's tomorrow night against a team in Hawaii. It'll be at 9:00. As far as I know, it's not on TV. I know it's not on ESPN. Luke Metz will open up tonight for his team. So looking forward to that.
It's only on TV. It's not on TV.
I haven't seen that. Now, the one that is on TV is Dorian Barney. He's with Carrollton now. I talked about him yesterday. It's just wild. I didn't know his game was going to be on TV, or I would have brought that up yesterday. That game is on ESPN tonight at 7:00. They play Woodward Academy. And so, yeah, there's a bunch of games coming up on ESPN.
So Juju could really end up at Indiana, they're saying? This is what the people are saying.
Well, there's apparently a family tie in there, like with the coaching staff or something. So, yeah, he could. And, isn't Kirk Cignetti the coach over at Indiana?
Yeah, the quarterback coach is Tino Sinceri, and Tino is who's pretty tight with Juju from what I hear.
Yeah.
I hear they have a good relationship. Our old buddy Tino Sinceri.
And it's like Georgia Tech. Not to go off on a Georgia Tech Indiana rant on here on Locked on Bama, but Georgia Tech just apparently signed an $800,000 a year deal or something with Josh Petty, who's one of the top offensive linemen in the country. Now he's a guard. He's a little undersized. And you're like, hey, what's that all about? I think what it's about is trying to make a splash. And I think Indiana's like, hey, we're going to get somebody. We got to get somebody and move the meter.
Just crazy that Juju could end up at Indiana and Deuce Knight, per rumor, could end up at Auburn or Ole Miss and not at Notre Dame. And it's just sort of shocking. And like I told everybody on this show 3 years ago, and it's one of the, since I'm wrong about so many things, let's talk about the one thing I've been right about in the history of the show. I said back when NIL first, I said, there are going to be strange results from here going forward. There will be something strange, and people that have followed recruiting forever will go, well, this doesn't make any sense. How did this happen? The answer is NIL. That's going to explain every weird thing you see in recruiting. And when we say that Juju could end up at Indiana and that Deuce Knight is going to decommit from the team that plays on NBC for Auburn or Ole Miss, it's NIL. But hey, for all Alabama fans shaking their head about it, if Alabama lands AK Deer and has the number one class in the country, don't think for 1 second Alabama's not a major player in the NIL game. You have the number one class. It's absurd to think otherwise. But that's the world we're living in now.
Yep, you gotta pay to watch them play.
Pay to play.
Or to make them play or something. I don't know. I'll come up with something better later. Well, look, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We may be back tomorrow, depending on what comes out of that scrimmage. We'll see. And where Jimmy's moving. We'll see. But until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.